Happening now, Tennessee lawmakers in a special session on public safety, focusing on reducing gun violence. And you could see protesters lined up inside the chambers there in the balcony, attempting to make their voices heard today. State Capitol reporter Chris O'Brien joining us live from the Capitol with details on today's session. And it's officially started, Chris.
Yeah, Mark, it has officially started. In fact, the Senate is already out. The House, way back in the distance behind me, is still debating rules right now. But the Senate came in and out within maybe even 10, 15, 20 minutes. They came in, agreed to the rules, and came on out. It's just that this last debate in the House, there's a lot of rules that are being up for debate. I'll go over that in just a little bit here. But for right now, things are really heating up. And it's all a result of the Covenant shooting, right? That's why we're here today. And in fact, we caught up with some parents this past couple of weeks and asked them what it's been like to have to deal with this over and over and over again. In fact, from then until now, they've made a lot of progress making their own nonprofit. First, it was shock, then grief, then anger. And finally, resolve for the victims' families.
I need to be advocating. I need to be calling for change because those people need to be able to comfort their kids. They need to be able to be there for their family.
Covenant's families have been through an extraordinarily difficult few months, but now they're looking to make change. They started a nonprofit called Covenant Families for Brighter Tomorrows, aimed at tightening Tennessee's lax gun laws.
The word meaningful is different for everybody. I think that we'll see some progress. Whether or not that's the progress that everyone wants to see remains to be seen.
The movement was punctuated by a commercial voiced by Katie Dickhouse, whose 9-year-old daughter Evelyn died in the mass shooting.
On March 27, 2023, our lives were forever changed by simply dropping our girls off at school. A place where Evelyn loved to learn, strengthened her faith, and where her life was taken by a troubled person.
In closing the ad, Katie called on lawmakers to pass stricter, bipartisan gun reform.
Beginning August 21st, Tennessee lawmakers will decide whether to pass responsible firearm safety laws that will work towards protecting our children and their right to life. What's more important?
But those pleas have not led to action from the governor and Republican supermajority. Instead, they focused much of the call for the special session on juvenile justice and mental health reform.
Addressing juvenile crime is an important part of public safety. Addressing crime in any form is relevant and should be included when talking about public safety.
We're not going to pass the enhanced orders protections. There's no gun bills that can be passed, so yeah.
It's a reversal from Lee, who promised he'd fight for gun reform months ago.
A person that has shown that they are a real threat to themselves or to others, that person, that individual should not have access to firearms.
Still, the families tied to the nonprofit aren't angry at Lee. In fact, they say they appreciate him making the call in the first place, acknowledging their journey doesn't end next week.
I commend Bill Lee for calling for an ERPO. I am so grateful for that. I think that there's a lot of very important pieces missing in what he put out, and I want that done properly. I don't want us to rush legislation and say, yeah, we have an ERPO, but it's really not, because it doesn't actually do any protection.
Facing a Republican supermajority bent on keeping gun laws the way they are, the nonprofit may be fighting for a long time. Now, on the House floor right now, I mentioned that the rules are being debated pretty significantly right now. And the reasoning is because Republicans have put forward an idea of the rules to say, if you are called out of order, you could potentially be silenced on the House floor for up to 3 days. And that's essentially the entirety of this special session. We caught up with Representative Sam McKenzie out of Knoxville earlier today to ask him about it.
It's the scourge of a supermajority. They can do whatever they want to, and they're drunk with power right now. To say that because one person rules another person out of order, they're going to be silenced. The first offense, 3 days silence. We may not be here but a week.
Now, we're still waiting to see just if those rules get passed. We do expect them to, because the Republicans do have a supermajority. It would take a considerable number of them to come over for those rules not to get passed. And coming up in just a little bit, you might remember Governor Lee way back when called for an emergency relief protection order, but now he's kind of come off of that notion. We'll have more on that coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Mark, I'll send it back to you.
Chris, thank you so much. Of course, we will cover this entire special session from beginning to end, and you can find all of our coverage at WKRN.com.